Hey guys, Michelle from Michelle's Craft Corner here. Today, trying to make my house proud. So go Gryffindor with this latest card tutorial inspired by Harry Potter. You guys ready to see it? All right, get my wand ready. Leviosa. Let's get started. So here is a close-up of that card we're going to be making today, this fun Harry Potter themed card. We've got Professor McGonagall using that beautiful You stamp set, some Quidditch being played outside, good old Hedwig. And then if you flip inside, we also have McGonagall as her cat form. And then on the back, we have the sorting hat. So I'm going to show you how to make all of these. Now this is going to be a little bit of a longer video, so what I decided to do is break it down into steps. So we're going to start with showing you how to make McGonagall, then the window, the owl, and then the other pieces as well. So if there's just one component you want to know how to make, you can skip ahead to that. So just quickly, now we're using a lot of things in this video today, but I just want to start with the stamp sets. So in today's video, I'm going to be using the Spooky Cat stamp set. This is from the holiday catalog. We're going to be using the hat, the owl, and then also the cat face for that. So really awesome set. We're also, of course, going to be using our wonderful, beautiful You stamp set, which I absolutely love. Specifically out of this set, we're going to be using this lady right here with the hat. And then we're also going to be using, as far as stamps go, the Lovely as a Tree stamp set, which is just an awesome set. If you don't have it, you really should. But this is just for that top of the trees. So if you have another tree set or something with leaves, you could kind of switch for that instead. Oh, forgot the post-it note for that one. There we go. There's a post-it note for that one. Okay, and then for paper, the paper we're going to be using, we've got the Spooky Night Designer Series paper for her hat, which I just love this set. This is a really good Halloween themed paper stack. Good oranges and blacks. So we're just going to fussy cut one of those hats out for her. And then we're also going to be using the Wood Textures Designer Series paper, just for that little edge of the desk and also for the stand for Hedwig. Our base paper color is going to be the Smoky Slate. And then we're also going to be using some Whisper White and some Early Espresso today. So that's just kind of getting us started on some of the basics. Alright, so I'm going to start with this video. And we're going to focus on doing Professor McGonagall. Now, anytime I'm doing a character-based art piece or anything that's, you know, trying to copy something so it's recognizable, I like to get reference pictures. So I'm going to show you what I grabbed off the internet. So you can kind of see what I was going for here with her green robes. We've got the double buttons. If you can, let me zoom that in here. Okay, we've got the double buttons on her breastplate. I did have a little bit of that locket, but it's not showing up as well, so maybe we'll do a little better job. And so you can also just see the black hat works well. She doesn't really have the buckle in the movie, but it was just easier to use the one from the paper. So, and then of course we've got the wand. All right, so we zoom back out. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to grab a piece of Whisper White. Now, you don't really need a particularly big piece, so just a scrap will do, as you're going to be cutting it up anyway. Okay. Let's go ahead and grab that stamp out. And of course, we're going to need our archival basic black for her. And then to color her in, the main colors I used was the Always Artichoke. It's a really good shade of green. And then we're also going to be using the journaling pens to get some of that extra detail, and this is specifically the 0.1 size. It's a little finer detail. You can also use just your basic black marker as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just stamp her straight onto our paper. to the side. Okay, so we're going to start with Our Lady. You can see that right there. You can already see the similar post. And what I'm going to do is take my marker and I'm going to add those extra details. Now I'm going to try to do this nice and slow so you can see. If you're nervous about it, you can always do it with a pencil and then go over the lines later. That's generally a really good tip for those that are new to doing this kind of thing. So the easiest thing to start with is her neck line. So of course she has that high collar, so we're just going to kind of give her a little circle right there around the neck. Now if you want to try to go ahead and add that little brooch, you can kind of do a little circle and fill it in with some yellow. That little there you go, just to kind of do that brooch, and then we'll do a little dot in the center for it. There we go. Okay. And then we're also going to do, if you see on this one, she's got the long black sleeves and then kind of the green hanging down. So we're going to kind of cut her off like right about the elbow here on both sides. And this one has this kind of nice little line, so we're just going to add to that line. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. And we're going to just go ahead and fill in the ends of those sleeves. And if you don't want to do this with the journaling pen, you could also do it with just the basic black. Now we're going to do a little line for the end of her sleeve here. So we're just going to have that black on the elbow. Okay. And then the other thing that's a good next step is doing that V down the center of the dress. So we want to kind of go, you imagine belly button just a little lower. Start with just a nice little dot as your top point. And then we're just going to draw a line straight down. Just kind of like a tint, like a V. You can always fill it out a little thicker if you think you went too thin, but start thin first. Okay. We've got a V for her dress. Now the next thing that's going to be a little tricky is doing her sleeves. Now we've got kind of the big billowy sleeves going on here, which can be a little tricky to do. So we're going to basically take, going from this corner, the bottom of her arm, and do a big loop for that sleeve. So like that, just like that. And then from the end of the sleeve, we're going to go back up and kind of under the breast. So just down like that. You can do it a little longer, a little shorter. All right. And then I also, you know, the beautiful you lady has got a very nice hourglass silhouette. It's a little thinner than most ladies tend to be. So I kind of like to fill her out a little bit more. So I'm going to draw a line just to kind of fill out that curve a little bit. We're going to color it green, and then we're also going to kind of add some flow to the end of the dress. So just kind of billowing it out just like that. And once we color it in, it will be a little better. I'm going to go ahead and add her buttons too. So we're just going to do 2 small circles just under that breast line, kind of at the thin part of her waist, just like that. I'm going to go ahead and add that other sleeve. Now this one's kind of a little odd angle because her arm is down, but we're just going to do another loop just like that. And actually I probably should have filled it in on this side as well, so I think I will fill it in on this one. So I filled it in on the other side. Okay, and so this is all going to extra be colored in green, and I'm actually going to fill just a little thicker. Okay, so you guys get the general idea. Now, as I said, once we start coloring, adding the green, it'll pop a little bit more. So let's go ahead and color in those buttons. Okay, really simple. And, oh, actually, let me go ahead and get her neck too. Just be careful with that brooch. You don't want to color in the brooch, which I accidentally did on the other one. That's why this fine tip is really good. Okay, got that. We're going to go ahead and grab our artichoke. and color in her dress. Or robe, I guess I should say robe. And since we are going to be fussing cutting it out, if you don't stay in the lines, it's okay, because we're going to be careful around the buttons. Okay, and because she's kind of behind this desk, you don't have to draw it out all the way or worry really about how the bottom of it looks as much. Okay, I think it's looking pretty good. Hopefully you guys agree. Okay. So then the other thing that I want to do is draw her wand. Now for this, I'm just going to use just a thin bit of brown. It doesn't really matter which shade you use. This is, I just grabbed chocolate chip. But the thing that you do want to be sure is to trace a straight line. So I'm just going to grab a Post-it note, but if you just have a scrap of paper, that works too. And we're going to lay that down so that we can just trace a straight line for where that wand is going to be. Go a little above and a little below that hand, so she's just holding it. Go. There you go. You see that? Now, of course, you can make it a little thicker, a little thinner. You can kind of give it a little bit of a bubble at the end for a handle. So a lot of different ways that you can customize the wand there, but that's just the basic idea. Now, the last thing we're going to do is color in her face and arms. Now, Stampin' Up! Has just come out with these awesome new blends markers. These are alcohol-based markers, and the ivory is a perfect skin tone. Love, love, love this. Now, these are recommended to use with the Memento ink, but I'm going to tell you a secret. You can actually use them with the archival, but if you touch the lines, they will kind of bleed a little bit. So you just have to be really careful and just mainly hit the center. Now, depending on what character you're coloring in, having it a little darker may not be bad, but just as long as you just kind of try to stay in those lines, you should be good and not get too much of a bleed. But I just think that this color is just so perfect for skin tones and for stuff like this. There we go, see? Now, of course, you can go over it a couple times and give her a little bit of a darker skin tone, but I think that's probably pretty good. So we'll just go with that. So, love the blends markers. All right, and then the next thing is we're going to go ahead and cut out her body with our awesome paper snips. Now, you might be wondering, well, why are you cutting it out? Couldn't you just stamp it on the gray? Well, if we stamped it on the gray, it wouldn't show up very well, especially for coloring in. So doing it this way, and if you want to throw a dimensional behind her, you could too, to kind of give her a little more depth. But this just makes the colors stand out and pop a little better. Now, you do have to be careful when cutting out her wand, as it is so thin and tiny. I guess you could use like a thin piece of brown cardstock if you had that you wanted to use as the wand instead, or if you wanted to use another piece from this wonderful Wood Textures Designer Series paper, you could do that as well. So there you have it. You have your basic McGonagall, and I actually think I'm going to fill in her crease in her robe a little bit more. Just a little. Okay, make sure we don't have any spots. All right, that definitely looks better. Okay, and then the other thing too is you can see she's got this hole in her arm. Now if you want, you can fussy cut or down the arm and cut out that hole, but I found since we're just gluing her on top of the smoky slate that it's just easier to just grab a gray marker and just color that in. It's such a small space that coloring with that basic gray will really just hide it, and you don't have to worry about cutting such a fine spot. See, so just like that, and this is the basic gray marker. All right. So next thing we're going to do is cut out a tiny little witch's hat from this Spooky Night set. Now for her, I really liked using this black one that has the buckle. To me, it really seemed the most in character compared to some of the other ones, but if you want to do just a generic witch or wizard, you can do any of the hats. Let me just grab that real quick. We're just going to fussy cut this out. So we have our hat. Now you can flatten that brim just a little bit so it sits a little more flush. I would try to make sure we don't have any of that background vanilla. Let me get that little corner. There we go. All right, so we've got our hat. Now for this, we're going to place it right along the same hat line that she's already wearing. Now you'll notice you'll have a little bit of the lip. Let me put this a little closer to the camera here so you guys can see. There we go. So you'll have a little bit of that lip from the hat. We're going to just color that in black too. There's also just a close-up of our McGonagall colored, which I think she turned out pretty good. And this is the comparison here. Zoom back out. Okay, so we're just going to color in that little extra hat edge just along the side of her face, and then just glue our witch's hat right on top, and she will be good to go. So I'm just going to grab just a little dot of the multi-purpose glue. Don't need very much. We're just going to lay that hat right on top of the other, which this is a really good one for this since she already has a hat on. So there we go. So there we have our basic McGonagall done. It's time to move on to the next step. Okay, now that we've gotten McGonagall done, we're going to go ahead and work on our window, which I really like how it turned out with the Quidditch in the background. So this is pretty simple to make. So for this one, we're going to be using the Hearth and Home Thinlits, which have this really cool window and then also a mantle piece. And we're going to be using just a bit of early espresso to cut that out. And then some Whisper White for our background scene. Now this is cut at 3 1/4 by 2 1/2, which is just about the perfect size to fit in that window, so it doesn't take a lot. And then we're also going to be using a little bit of the gold sheets. Now when I say little bit, I mean little bit, because all we need is just that one circle for the Quidditch ball. If you don't have the gold sheets, You could use just any of the yellows like crushed curry or so saffron to just cut out that small circle. Okay. For our ink colors, we're going to be using the Marina Mist for the sky. And then for our edge of foliage, we're going to be using the Garden Green. But yet again, you can use different greens or blues just depending on what you have on hand. And then of course we are going to be sponging that sky as well. All right, you guys ready? Let's move forward. Here we go, move that out of the way. All right, so first thing I did is I actually trimmed the top and the bottom of this window down. Now you can see if I hadn't done that, it would really be quite big on this card. Now if you like the look of having that top and bottom to the window, you can of course leave it, but I thought that it actually kind of gave the card a little bit more room having that trimmed down. So we're going to go ahead and do that real quick. What you can do with your Stampin' Cutter or just your scissors, and there's actually these little nice creases, which I don't know if you can see in the video, but creases from the die that you can just follow the little lines. So we're just going to cut just right along that middle one. Okay. Flip and do the same thing. So it is really more of a square window. Okay. Ta-da! Alright, so you can see our piece fits right there, and actually we're probably going to trim it again, but I'm going to stamp first and see which side I like a little better. Alright, so we've got our tree from Lovely as a Tree on a block, and we really only need just the top tip, so we're just going to stamp that top tip of the foliage. And of course you can make it as dark or light as you would like. And actually I probably should have grabbed the artichoke. I think it would have matched your dress better, but there we go. Got the trees going on. Then we're going to go ahead and grab the Marina Mist and our little Stampin' Sponge and just sponge the sky. Oh, I was gonna shake the camera. Go. We got the basic sky and forest edge right there. Move that off to the side. All right, then we're gonna go ahead and do our Quidditch ball. I'm using the 1/2-inch circle punch to just punch out that circle. And a couple of the sets, depending on what you have on hand, also have small circles. So there's a lot of different things you could use for that. All right, and then we're also going to use just a scrap of white. Now, in this one right here, I used the tiny hearts from the Retired Owl Punch, but it occurred to me that you actually can use a lot of different things to do the wings. And the other thing that I thought about was using the Fox Punch. So we've got the little end of the tail, which would also make good wings, and then also this kind of V-shaped piece, which is what I'm actually going to be using for this one. So just another little piece of Whisper White. We're going to slide it in just where that's all you can see is that one piece, and punch it, so you don't have to do the whole thing. You just did that one little piece. And see, we've got our little wings. So if you see that, I actually think that looks a little bit better than the other. And the other thing you can do too is we can kind of trim it in the center and glue Actually, that was not the best trim job here. There we go. Okay, and glue one on the front, that, and one on the back. Let me put it down so you guys can see that. So I think that actually looks a lot better than the original, so we're going to go with that. I love that fox punch. Go ahead and do just a tiny dot of glue for the wing. And then the other side. Glue that. Okay, and I'll pull it up closer to the camera so you guys can see that. There you go. Isn't that cute? Ah, I love that. Alright, so this is just going to be on the side of our window. And then we're also going to go ahead and do our Quidditch circles. Now for this, same thing as the Quidditch ball. You can use any circles you have, but I'm just going to use the Stampin' Up! Hole punch. If you have a standard hole punch, that will work as well. And I'm just going to punch a hole in a scrap. Just like that. And then take and use that circle as my guide. Now, whatever size circles you decide to go with, you do want the Quidditch hoops to be smaller than the ball, just for perspective's sake. So we'll start with our tallest. And actually, let's go ahead and glue the window down. Now, I say this because depending on where I want to put those circles, I do want them to be in the frame. So it's a little easier to kind of eyeball where to stick those circles if you have the window down. So let's go ahead and just glue that real quick. And actually I'm going to grab my fine tip glue pen just to be a little faster. Get that tiny little edge. Alright, so we just kind of decide where on here you want to stick it, how much. I'm going to do it more here so I get more of the trees. Go. And I will trim that top part off in a second. So I guess I did give the measurements for the full window with the top and bottom. Alright, so then we can also go ahead and glue our golden snitch on here. Just be sure that he fits in the window frame so he doesn't look like he's in the room. There we go. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and do those circles. We'll start with the tallest one. And yet again, get my journaling pen. We're just going to trace that circle just around the outer edge. So just like that. Then we're going to do the next one. Just kind of down and to the right. Same thing. Tracing that out. And then moving to the other side. Just like that. So we have our 3 circles. And actually I think I may want to make them a little thicker, but you get the idea. Alright. And then you're going to yet again take a straight edge, doesn't really matter if it's a scrap or what it's from, and we're going to line up down the center of the circle to draw the line for the post that's holding the hoops. Just like that. And do the last one. So there you go. You can see we've got our Quidditch hoops, we've got the ball. If you wanted, you could also stamp more trees if you wanted it to kind of cover it more on the bottom. Now we're just going to trim that excess off the top. There you go. We have our basic Quidditch window. Okay, so now we have McGonagall and the window done. We're going to move on to the owl. Now the owl was basically embossed with our white embossing powder using the Spooky Cat stamp set. Now here he looks kind of dark, but actually embossed in white, it has a totally different look. Now as a reference, Hedwig is a snowy white owl, so he's pretty much all white with just little black flecks and yellow eyes. So pretty simple as far as owls go. So for this one, we're just going to get a scrap of black, our basic black, and then the white Stampin' Up! Embossing powder. They come in these cute little containers. We're also going to be using the Versamark to heat that on there. And then, of course, our awesome Stampin' Up! Heat tool. Love this for heat embossing. All right. And then the last thing is I'm going to go ahead and grab a Pierce Matte tube just to kind of improve the coverage of that photopolymer stamp set. So let's go ahead and ink that up. Right there. Black. I don't know if you can see them or not. And then personally, I really like having like little plastic containers for my embossing powder. It just decreases the mess and they all kind of have a home. So I'm just going to kind of sprinkle this just over top here. Instead of trying to fit it back in this tiny container, it's just going to go right in here. Just like that. Okay, so you can already kind of see he's got a little bit of a different look. Let me brush off some of this excess here. Get a good thump. Okay, and you can also see I missed a little bit of a spot right there. I'm just going to hit that real quick. There we go. Got it. Okay. So now we've got the powder on. Our next step is to heat it. Now it's always good to put away your embossing powders. So I have learned the hard way, that stuff does get blown about if you angle the wrong way. And we're just going to go ahead and put it on one and heat it up. And you can see if you've gotten all the spots, it'll have a nice glossy finished look and it'll also feel kind of smooth. If you missed any spots, then they'll feel kind of be grainy or look grainy. Looks like the little tip of his tail I may have missed. Okay, so now we have our basic owl. But as you can see, he's still lacking some detail. So we're gonna add some to him using our nice yellow marker. Now this is the crushed curry. And then yet again pulling out that journaling pen to add a little bit more detail to him. Now if you'll look, I added lines for where his wings are and then also gave him some little feathers. So we're going to do that. And then for his eyes, now he's got the little black centers. So we're just going to basically give him some yellow around. All right. Just that. And just some little feather half circles there. And then I also did just kind of a little bit of a line for feathers here. Just like that. So pretty simple, but just giving them a little bit more detail there. All right. And then we're going to go ahead and take our yellow. Now it won't show up super well. For some reason, I mean, it's just that shiny embossing. It just doesn't want to take color very well. But we're just going to hit it with a bit of that yellow just all around. And then to better define those lines, we're going to draw circles around that yellow. So it'll kind of make it pop a little bit better. Okay, his eyes are a little wonkier in this one, but that's okay. All right, so once you have him colored, we're just going to go ahead and fussy cut him out. So you can kind of see our basic owl. Now, I also kind of like to round out his shoulders a little bit more because I feel like it makes him look a little bit, you know, fatter, and then also kind of tapered the tail a little bit. Now, on this one, I trimmed the tail up a bit just because of how long it looks compared to the stand. So we're going to kind of do the same thing here. So he's just a little bit more round and cute. All right. So now once you have your basic owl done, we're going to go ahead and move on to his little owl stand. So for this, we're using the wonderful Wood Textures Designer Series paper. Now this is awesome because this stand really could be used with any scrap piece from the set. A lot of times you may have some little pieces left over, so this is a really great use to use up some of those because you're not using very much at all. If you did not have this, you could also just do a brown stand, but I just think, why do a brown when you can do an awesome wood grain look? So we're just basically going to cut off a small piece. I mean, this is basically about 1 inch by a little less than 1/4. And then this is going to be the top of his stand, and it's going to be glued right under the edge of his feet, so it does look like he's sitting on it. And then we're just going to cut another long strip. And you could use your Stampin' Trimmer to cut it if you don't want to use scissors for the base. So really, really simple. So let's just go ahead and glue those together real quick. Just do a little tiny dot on the top. Stick that like that. And then we're going to have our owl sitting behind, so we're just going to glue right under his feet. And tuck him under. Oh. Just down. Just like that. And there you have our basic little Hedwig owl. Alright, and then the other thing is we use that paper for is doing a little strip so it looks like she's behind a desk was my idea with that. If you don't want to do the strip, you don't have to, but I think it kind of gives it a little more of a pop and a bit of a rustic look. So yet again, that is pretty much any of the paper from this set. A really good use for a scrap, but you just need it to be the full length of the card. So for this, we're looking at 5.5. So let's grab one that's 5.5. There's a piece. Okay. And this one is just going to be trimmed to size. All right, so now we've got our basic pieces done. We're going to go ahead and move on to putting these together and finishing out the front of the card. So now that we have our 3 basic pieces for the front of the card finished, we're going to go ahead and do that next part here. So for our card base, we're going to be using some smoky slate cardstock. And we're also going to be using the brick wall embossing folder. Love this one. It's how we get this wonderful brick texture. So you're going to need a card base and then also another piece of the smoky slate cut at 5.5 by 4 1/4. Because of the design of this particular one, if we want the bricks to be going horizontal, we really can't put it in and run it through the big shot. It's just going to be too wide. So we're just going to do a separate piece and glue it on top. So that's 5.5 by 4 1/4. Stick it in that folder, run it through the big shot. You're going to get this wonderful brick texture. I absolutely love it. And to kind of give it a little bit more of a castle feel, what I want to do is sponge it with the basic archival black. And for me, that just kind of gives it a little bit of an extra pop and stands out a little bit better. Kind of makes those, just the little edges of the brick stand out better. So we're just going to kind of give it a nice brushing, and you can just see those bricks just pop. Sponging. You can kind of see that brick pattern just pop a little bit better. Alright, there we go. So we got kind of the basic brick background going, and you could go heavier or lighter. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and take our card base and just glue that brick to the front. Just kind of make it nice and even. If you mismeasure, you can just trim the little excess off. Sure it's all lined up. Oh, it slid. There we go. Okay, so you can see that it's nice and flush with your corners. Good to go. All right, so we're going to put that down. I'm going to go ahead and stick our other pieces on there, and if you have any other edges you need to trim, you can go ahead and do those, such as a little edge right there. There we go. Okay. We've got our window, got our owl. It looks like I did part of that stand a little too long, so I'll trim it. And then also Professor So it's good to kind of lay them out before gluing, just to make sure that your placement is good so everything fits. Just like that. There we go. And you could even put Minerva in front of the window if you'd rather. Just kind of off to the side, but keep in mind you do have that colored space. So we're just going to start with the owl. Go left to right. We're going to add our window. And then our professor. And do be sure to do a little glue on her wand as well so it will lay flat. Doesn't need a lot though, just a little touch. Okay. Let's stick her right there. And I actually may go over that wand again so we don't have the white line. Alright. So let's trim this little excess off and then add our little wood desk piece. Now this is basically a 1/2 inch by 5.5. So just to kind of give it that little edge. And because it's a little long, because this is not actually 5.5, I'm going to trim that. Okay, so there we have the front of our card done. Okay, so now we're going to move on and do our other extra additional pieces, our cat and our hat. Alright, now we're on to our final 2 pieces. So we're going to make this cute McGonagall style cat for the inside. And you, of course, could put it anywhere else. And then also the little sorting hat for the back, which I don't know if you can really see his face super clear. Okay, yeah, you can. Alright, so to make these, we of course are going to start off with the awesome cat punch. And we're going to be using the Spooky Cat stamp set again. And I forgot to mention earlier in the video that these are actually available in a bundle. So you can get them both together and save a little money. And it's a really fun set. So out of this set, we're going to be using the little cat face and the hat for these 2 next parts. So we're going to start with our cat punch. And just kind of flip. And this is just a piece of that smoky slate yet again. Punch him out. So we've got our little cat. And then the set has an adorable tiny little cat face. So we're going to go ahead and just stamp his face on real quick with some basic black archival. And that kind of gives us a center point to do the rest of his stripes around. Or her, I guess I should say her stripes around. Go. Now for the stripes, I used both that journaling pen again, and then also my Stampin' Basic black marker to kind of color those in. So basically, her cat is just kind of a striped gray cat. So we're going to give her some stripes just down the face. Kind of on the cheeks. Kind of fill them out a little bit. Because you don't want them to look too uniform. Kind of do down the side. And then also on the tail as well. Okay. Do more with this one, just kind of fill them in a little. Alright, so you can kind of see the cat taking shape. Actually, I'm going to flip to the other tip because it'll be a little faster here. Here we go. Yeah, not really a right or wrong way. I forgot to pull up the reference picture for this one, but there's not really anything super distinctive about this cat, just besides the gray and the stripes. So you can kind of get a good idea. Now from here, what I did to kind of give her a little bit more of a fur-like texture and definition is, yet again, I pulled out my black and my sponge and just gave her kind of a soft sponging just kind of all over. And to me, that kind of looked a little bit more fur-like, just kind of that soft texture. And then just to kind of define the edges, just kind of went around the edges, sponging, just like that. Alright, so there you go. We've got our basic cat for the inside. I also wanted to mention for the inside center piece, this is just a piece of Whisper White cardstock cut at 5 by 3 3/4. So, alright. We've got that. Now we're going to move on to our sorting hat. Now this was made using that hat stamp from the Spooky Cat set. Now this particular hat, so you can see the better picture here, has a whole bunch of extra details that we don't really need, doesn't really fit the classical sorting hat look, such as the spider and the buckle and all of that. So I'm going to show you what I decided to do instead. So we're going to take a piece, just a small scrap piece of early espresso. You could do chocolate chip as well. We're going to take our brown stamping marker here. And instead of coloring or marking the whole thing, we're just going to take it and just color the edge. So we're going to trace the edge of that hat all the way around. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we just want that general hat shape. Just like that. And once you're sure you got all your lines, make sure you get the tip there. Okay. You're just going to stamp it on your scrap. Hopefully mine is big enough. Yeah, it's big enough. Okay. Okay, and so you'll just have that tone-on-tone edge going on. And then what I did is, using kind of the natural curves of it, we just kind of drew a little line for the lips, excuse me. So this is his mouth. And then we did two just kind of like half circles, like he's asleep, up at the top, just like that. And then we're also going to give him a bit of a brim. So we're going to take our marker and just kind of along the bottom trace, and actually I think I used the smaller edge. Trace, yeah, just kind of a little edge, that brim. And then we're just going to cut it out and give it a little texture around the edge. So I'm going to grab my paper snips here. So you can see our basic hat looking pretty awesome. So I'm going to just take my marker again and just kind of go around the edge, just making sure it's kind of nice and defined. Now you could also give this a little sponging, but it's so dark it doesn't, in my opinion, really need the sponging. But just want to be sure that you can kind of see those defined edges. But yeah, that's basically it. So the sorting hat is just the hat with the eyes and a mouth. So we'll just add those to our card and we are done. So there's our cat, then we'll flip it to the back and add the hat. So there's a whole bunch of other Harry Potter themed ideas you can do with this. I did want to show you guys one other bonus card that I made. So the same owl's design, the same hat, although he's on a little bit of a lighter brown on this one. So a lot of different things that you can do, but I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And to purchase any of the products seen in the video, do check out my shop. The links are in the comments below. Thanks guys, see you next week.